The CDL is returning and it is coming very, very quickly, which means it is time for another tier list. We're going to be getting ready to go into Major 1 here. Qualifiers are going to be starting in early December, which means we're only a couple weeks away from the season starting. And so we are going to talk about all the different teams, and we are going to be making a tier list about for each and every single one of these teams. I do want to spend some time talking about each of the different rosters, but in terms of the tier list, we're pretty much just going to be the only sort of main focus that we have been having from these teams in terms of their performances is the Monster Energy Invitational, as well as some scrims that teams have been streaming so that we can get some sort of an idea as to what to be expecting from all of these individual teams going into the season. So we are going to be looking at all of the CDL teams and creating a tier list based on how they performed and giving kind of a little bit of a early style of power rankings. I think the Monster Energy Invitational, while we do have a pretty solid showcase of what all these different teams were doing, I think this doesn't give the best amount of information as to what we are going to be expecting out of the early rankings. I think there are a lot of teams that were looking really, really good and did make a ton of upsets and made it a lot farther than what we were expecting them to. But I also just don't think that some of these teams are going to be as solid as what we would be expecting these teams to be. But I want to just spend some time talking about each of them and giving a chance to just kind of get an idea as to what we will be expecting out of these different teams going into Major 1 as well as the rest of the season. Most of this is going to be focused around Major 1, so we'll just kind of be going from there. Starting off, we have the Boston Breach. Boston Breach are bringing their core three from last year back, but then they picked up Nasty from Vancouver Surge in their tournament in the Monster Energy Invitational. They did not get very far, placing 13th and 16th. They, I believe it was, they lost to Cloud9, and then they played Vancouver Surge and lost to Surge. So they lost right away, taking as close to last as you can in that tournament. However, looking at the Boston Breach, we are looking at a team that they hit winners finals of champs last year. Yes, this invitational they didn't look too great, so I don't think they're off to the hottest start, but they did make a pretty decent size upgrade from Awakening over to Nasty, who had a killer season in Black Ops 6, being one of the key points to the success of Vancouver Surge, which brought them to multiple different major finals, as well as a Champs Grand Final and the EWC Grand Final. So I really think this Boston Breach roster has a potential. I don't know if they're going to necessarily be a top team, but I do think they have a pretty solid potential at being able to do some upsets. I think they do have some growing pains that they need to work out, so I don't think they're quite putting themselves in that A tier position. But based on what we've seen so far and what we've seen from the last year going into this year, I definitely think that the Boston Breach have a solid start with being a B tier team. So going on to the next team, we have the Carolina Royal Ravens. They're a team that honestly, they're a huge question mark for me. They are a team. They have Craze, Lurks, Nero, and Slasher. They placed at the Launch Energy Invitational. They placed seventh, going up against. They beat G2 3-0 and then proceeded to lose to Optic Texas 3-0, which, I mean, that's not really much to do. They beat the Vancouver Surge and then lost to Toronto Koi. So I think out of all of the teams that they were facing, they kind of won the ones that they should have and lost the ones that maybe they shouldn't, and lost the ones that they should have. So, like losing against Koi and losing against Optic Texas definitely makes sense. However, looking at this team, there are some areas where this team has a bunch of potential of being a really, really good team, but it also could be a team that just is not going to be where they're supposed to be. Specifically, I'm looking at Nero, who was playing on G2 Minnesota last year, Minnesota Rocker. He was a really, really strong contender for Minnesota early on in the season, but then as the year went on, he really, really struggled with consistency, and I definitely think that Nero is going to need to pick up that consistency. Same thing with Slasher. Slasher was such a key point to Carolina's success in Major 1, and then for the rest of the year, just did not perform the way that he needed to. He ended up being a key factor for why Carolina just were not doing the things that they were supposed to be doing. And didn't pay too much attention to his season on Boston last year, or 2 years ago, but I do know that Boston was not a great team to be paying attention to that year, anyways, during the MW3. Now, looking at Lurks and Craze, Craze is somebody who I don't know if they have too much of a stint in the CDL, but they came out on the Omit roster at Esports World Cup and made an absolute statement. Omit taking down the likes of FaZe, as well as making just a lot more insane of a run than anybody was expecting at the Esports World Cup. So Craze is going to have some pretty big shoes to fill in terms of that performance, but he already was playing exactly kind of how we would be expecting from him in that Monster Energy Invitational. And then the final piece of the puzzle to Carolina is Lurks, a rookie who is 19 years old, very, very new to the CDL scene, and so he's kind of a wild card. We don't really know exactly what to be expecting out of Lurks, and I think it's going to be a pretty high pressurized year for him. Just based on what we've seen so far, the biggest area that Carolina, the only real thing that I can really give them is a question mark. I don't really look at them as being a possibility for any major Sunday contenders. I just don't think Nero and Slasher are really going to be able to put up the performance that we would want to see for Carolina to be a consistent Sunday contender. However, I do think that with Craze, there is a high possibility that they could possibly work on to make some upsets. And if Lurks is able to show up in a lot of great ways, they could look really, really good. But going into this season, I don't really have a ton of faith into them, unfortunately. And I don't think that that's going to be Craze's fault. I think there's just going to be some of the other areas with the other teams. So I am unfortunately going to have to put Carolina in the D tier. I don't necessarily think they're going to be a horrible team, but in terms of the rest of the league, I really don't think they're going to be a top point, and I just don't see them being a consistent team going into Sundays. Looking at our next team, we have the LA Thieves, the biggest disappointment probably out of this Monster Energy Invitational. They won against TBG in map 5, which they definitely should not have gone to a map 5 with a team like LA Thieves. You've got Kenny, Hydra, Scrap, and Abizi, arguably an even stronger super team than what we saw out of them last year, and they did not start off hot at all. And then they lost 3-0 to the Paris Gentlemates, and then 3-0 Team War. But again, they're playing a Challengers team that should very much be seeing that. And then they got 3-0'd by G2 Minnesota. So LA Thieves are not off to a great start. And I think one of those things that is going to be a huge struggle for the LA Thieves is they currently don't have somebody that is known to be a objective holder. Looking at their team from last year, Ghosty was somebody who got a ton of flack last year for not being a major Slayer, but when you looked at his OBJ time, he was sitting on that hill like nobody's business. And this year, between Scrap, Kenny, Hydra, and Abizi, all 4 of them are very heavy on the Slayer end, but not as heavy on the end of the OBJ placement, and that's going to be something that is going to be a huge factor for them. Somebody is going to have to step up and be willing to be that person to soak in the hill time for those hard points, or be able to sit on the bomb for those SNDs. They can't always have the roaming Slayers at what you would be expecting. The rest of this team on paper should be incredible, but they really are going to have to figure out what it is going to take to make themselves that super team. Currently, right now, I don't see that super team coming out right away. I think they're going to have a ton of growing pains. And so, honestly, right now, I can't even really faithfully put the LA Thieves in an A tier slot, because with what they were showing from the Monster Energy Invitational and just what the problems that they have to work on, I think it is going to be something that's going to be a lot more than just simply one major to fix their issues. So right now, I'm going to be putting LA Thieves in the B tier. I think they should be higher. I think arguably LA Thieves should be going into that S tier slot. But with what they were putting out at the Monster Energy Invitational, I just don't see them being a strong contender unless they fix that major issue. That's something that I want to see from them. I'm an LA Thieves fan. I love LA Thieves. I have been an LA Thieves fan since the end of MW3. Primarily just been in love with the org. I love Ghosty and Joe Deceives. It's kind of sad that they're not on the team anymore, but love the roster, love the organization, and I want to see them do well. So I really hope that we can see them bump up from that B tier slot into that A tier. But only time will tell. Up next, we have the Miami Heretics. Miami did not play in the Monster Energy Invitational. So, or they did play. Sorry, I'm so wrong. They played, but they did have a sub. So Trakes was not there. He's still working on his visa and working on trying to get that figured out, which they are going to need to get that figured out very, very quickly because the season is right around the corner. And that is going to be putting them into a rough start going into the major. But they lost 3-1 to Paris Gentlemates, and then they proceeded to win 3-0 against TBG, and then lost 3-0 to Toronto Koi. Given their situation, not too surprising results from there, but we didn't see any of their matches against with Trakes. We haven't seen him play yet, so currently the only two people that we know on the team so far are Meadows, Rencor, and Super. Miami Heretics had an incredible year last year in terms of what they were expecting. Rencor came in and did absolute work. Super came in and did a ton of work as well. So just two of the strongest rookies we have seen in the CDL in a long time. Now, they did lose Real over to Toronto Koi, and now Trakes is coming in to fill those shoes. Now, I don't know if that's going to necessarily be an upgrade. I personally don't believe so because it is Miami Heretics. It's Real. He was arguably their best player last year, so for him to no longer be on the team does make things a lot more difficult, I think, for them. So Trakes is going to have some pretty big shoes to fill, but with Rencor, Metals, and Super behind him, I think they do have an opportunity to be a really, really strong team. I'm a little bit nervous for them going into this major because they will not have as many reps as the other teams, and especially for that major one, getting those early CDL points, those are huge. There were a lot of teams that were making it to challenge or making it to champ specifically because they had those early points going on in the beginning of the year. And I think that the Miami, they're going to need those early points, and they don't want to have those not be there. But because of the fact that they're starting with less reps and we just don't know what the Drake situation is going to be like, I got to put them in the C tier right now. I can't give them a high tier. I want to see Miami do really, really well and to carry over their success from last year. They almost made it to the grand finals at EWC, but unfortunately they lost when they got reverse swept by Optic Texas. So we'll see if they're able to bring back that same level of success or if it is just going to end up being similar to what we saw from the Monster Energy Invitational. I don't want to see that, but that's what things are looking like right now. Now, going on to the next team, we have G2 Minnesota. We have Estriel, Cramp, Mamba, and Skies. This team came out of absolutely nowhere on this tournament. Estriel, Cramp, Mamba, and Skies. Everybody expected them to not do very, very well, but when it came to the Monster Energy Invitational, they finished third place, losing in map number 5 to the Paris Gentlemates, who were an incredible team and made a ton. They were the second place team, taking Optic Texas to map 7 in the grand finals. And so looking at this team, Estriel, Cramp, Mamba, and Skies, you've got 3 players that honestly are really, really strong in Cramp, Mamba, and Skies. I don't even think necessarily that Estriel is a bad player. I think he just has a lot more work that needs to be done before he can be considered one of those top players. But Cramp is probably the most underrated player right now in the CDL. He was a very, very strong point for Cloud9's success last year, and I think he's only going to continue that. You saw him make a ton of incredible moves during the tournament, and he was a huge point of G2 success. Mamba, another player that honestly I feel like was very much. I would have been really shocked if Mamba did not show himself in the CDL after his performance at EWC. He did absolutely incredible on Omit and continued to show that same level of success in the Monster Energy Invitational. And so I really think that this G2 Minnesota team honestly has surprised me. They have shown themselves as being a really, really strong team. I think they have a possibility for some upsets. I think if they can continue this level of success, we might even see them in a few championship Sundays, which I would love to see as a Minnesota homeboy. So we'll see. I'm not like a big Minnesota fan, but I think there's a possibility that they could do some shakeups. Now, Skies. Skies is somebody that I really think needed this bounce back. Black Ops 6 was not his best year at all, but coming off of Modern Warfare 2, where he was a champs winner, and then coming off of Modern Warfare 3, where he was a champs grand finalist, I think everybody was shocked to see Skies not do as hot in the Black Ops 6 year, having some time on the Gentlemates, where they were arguably the worst team in the league outside of the Vegas Falcons. And then went on to Optic Texas when they were also in arguably their worst state that the organization has ever been in. And Skies was not able to find the success that everybody knows that he is capable of. But when it came to the Invitational, Skies played so well. He got active with the sniper on every single search and destroy, and it became a key part again to G2 Minnesota's success in those SNDs. And so I really think that Skies will be, if snipers can stay in, Skies on that sniper could be an insane redemption year, and I really, really hope that snipes stay in. I don't know why they wouldn't stay in, but pros are going to be pros, so you never know what's going to happen. But either way, would love to see Skies have his bounce back year. Estriel kind of continuing where he left off, I think, from last year. Didn't necessarily have a crazy outstanding performance, didn't necessarily do bad, but didn't necessarily do great. And I think that along the rest of these three, I think they will be able to complement Estriel really, really well and be able to give him the opportunities that he needs to thrive. And right now, with the way that G2 is standing, I think they honestly could show to be a really, really strong team. Right now, going specifically into Major 1, I'm going to put them at our first A tier team. I don't think they're necessarily the top of A tier. I think it might be a lot as other teams start to catch up for them to be able to make that championship Sunday. But I do really think they have a possibility to make a run if they can continue to take the things that they're doing well and build from that and continue to do well. Up next is another team that I think everybody was a little bit surprised about, with Cloud9 New York being the fourth place team here. We have Afro, Beans, Mac, and Vivid. But again, this is a team that I think everybody is kind of sleeping on. As we looked at the C9 New York roster and their performances in the Monster Energy Invitational, they win 3-1 against Boston Breach, won 3-0 against Omid Brooklyn. They lost to Paris Gentlemaids, beat 3-2 Toronto Koi, which I'm sure felt really, really good for Beans. And then they lost 3-1 to G2 Minnesota. So this is a team: Afro, Beans, Mac, and Vivid. Afro has been frying in challengers. If Afro did one thing last year, it was he took challengers and he took control of it. I think Afro was somebody who did extraordinarily well in challengers and has definitely proven that he belongs in the CDL. And so I really think that he is going to have another standout performance going into this year under the C9 banner. Beans, being another big player from Toronto Ultra, now on to C9 New York, probably is the funniest guy I think I've ever seen in the CDL. His way of trash talking is just absolutely hilarious, and he's shown that he can play. He was part of a very successful Toronto Ultra roster, and I think that I don't think he was their strongest player for sure. I mean, you couldn't have beaten Joe Deceive's performances, but I don't necessarily think that Beans really needed to go by the end of last year, but they decided to stick with Kleenex and Insight as a duo, and they let Beans go. And favor of Real, which, I mean, I do believe that Real is very much an upgrade over Beans. But we'll get into that when we talk more about Toronto Koi. But I think Beans just has another opportunity to kind of bounce back and find more success. I think he has some opportunities to be able to get some really, really strong success and continue to move forward and to bring the C9 New York roster to a very, very strong performance in throughout the year. Next, we have Mac. Mac was weird. I don't know why he was let go from C9 New York and then picked up right back up by them. I think Mac was another key factor of C9 success. I think there were a lot of moments with when it came to C9 struggle last year. I think they were always just right there on the verge of being a top 4 team, but just could not find the success. Unfortunately, for Attach's last year in the CDL, he just did not have the best performances and just couldn't overcome the hurdles that he needed to be able to help push C9 over. And Sib had a really rough start to the year, and with his rough start to the year, I think that just really set C9 back for where they were. But I do think Mac coming back into the league last year, and honestly, I still think he was a very, very key point. I think Mac and Kremp were probably the better players until the later half of the year when Sib really stepped up and just started absolutely frying. But I think Mac is going to be another key point to C9 success. And then Vivid, one of the most slept on players in the CDL right now. Vivid, while he may not be the best in the Slayer department, there's so many areas where no matter what, Vivid is just kind of doing what he needs to do. He might not always win his gunfights, but he knows how to soak kill time. He knows how to watch angles. And that's why we really don't see him dipping back into challengers for a very long time. If he does dip into there, it's only for a part of the year, and it's just to keep his gun hot. I really think the C9 New York team has an opportunity to really, really do some shakeups. I don't quite think they're an A tier team. I think we just need to see their team play a little bit more together and kind of see what kind of cohesion they're going to be able to form. They did a great start taking fourth in the Monster Energy Invitational, and I think they've set themselves up for success with this tournament. And if they continue to ride it out, they're going to look really, really good. But for right now, I'm going to put them at B tier. I do think they're a very strong team, and I think that they have an opportunity to really, really shake things up and look really strong this year. Next up, we have the Los Angeles, or no, sorry, not the Los Angeles Gentlemates, the Paris Gentlemates, a brand new team, which this isn't even their thing. Paris Gentlemates. We're going to pull up their roster here. There they are. The Paris Gentlemates. Throughout this tournament, they went known as Orglis. We have Envoy, Ghosty, Neptune, and Sib. This team is disgusting. They went they went very, very strong in this tournament. They went to map 5 with G2 Minnesota. They 3-0'd LA Thieves, 3-1 Cloud9 New York. They lost 3-0 to Optic Texas, and then they went to game 7 against Optic in the grand finals. Just they put in honestly outstanding performance for a team where only 2 of these players played together last year, and Ghosty and Neptune had quite a bit of beef going into this year with some GA breakings and things like that, but we're not going to go into all of that. So now they're on the same team, so we'll see how they're going to be able to work that out. Sib was on C9 New York last year, had a rough start to the year, but then kind of picked things up really, really strong, and was honestly kind of frying for C9. It was really rough not seeing him be to his full potential and what he could be, but now on paper, this team is nasty. Envoy and Ghosty, 2 players that were begged, I think, by the fans to be dropped for LA Thieves for a long time. I don't necessarily know if they needed to drop them. I think Envoy and Ghosty are both very strong players. Ghosty being that hill time guy, and Envoy not necessarily doing a lot of things wrong, but he wasn't really having a ton of takeover series like Hydra or Scrap were having. And I think that was kind of the area where they just decided to drop Envoy. But I really honestly believe that these two are very, very strong players. And I think this team for Paris is just going to be disgusting. I really hope they're going to be able to find ways to close out some series. I think they have a lot of strong opportunities to do really, really well. I think they are hands down our top A tier team. I don't think we're going to be getting any better than an A tier team. Well, they could bridge the gap between A and S tier, but right now we only have one team in S tier, and we'll talk about them when we get there. I'm sure you all know already what's going to be expected from them. But right now, definitely Paris Gentlemates are A tier, and I really am excited to see how these guys are going to come out in the first major in showing their strength and their power for the rest of the season. And then up next, we have the Riyadh Falcons, who I did not even pull up their thing. So we're going to pull that up here real quick. Riyadh Falcons, we have Celium, Exnid, Kismet, and Pred. This team is another major wild card. And when it comes to paper, this team should be one of the most disgusting teams out there in the CDL. I don't know how I think about them though, because you've got Celium, one of the most decorated CDL players of all time, one of the most decorated COD players, has an incredible career. And then you have Exnid, who came in last year as a rookie and learned under Pred and learned under Priesta and Arcides, which I'm not going to talk too much about Arcides because he's not back in the league. But learning under some previous world champions to now be here, and honestly played really, really well. He learned a lot, and I feel like Exnid really showed a ton of insane exponential growth as the year went on. Then we have Kismet, world champion, won the MW 2022 champs, and played for the Gentlemates last year and did not have a great year for himself at all. And I really would love to see the Bulldog do a little bit better. He's kind of going to be running that flex role for this team. And then you have Pred, who had an interesting year last year from being dropped from Optic, getting picked back up by Optic, things not going well in Optic, and then ending up on the Falcons. But he did win champs with Optic Texas in the MW3 years, so it's obvious that he knows what he's doing and he knows how to win. Uh, that's the thing that I've noticed about this team. All four of them honestly know how to win. Even Xnid, with despite not having a very successful season last year, has shown that he knows how to win. He knows what it takes to win with what he's learned from Pred and what he's learned from the other people that he's played with, now having multiple decorated veterans. The only thing with this team is when it comes to this team, I genuinely don't know what to think about what their play style is going to look like. Celium, massive Slayer, not a big OBJ player. Kismet is another kind of like angle holder. I remember a lot of times on Vault where Kismet would be playing over by the P4, watching over a top art, or he would be holding that top art, not being a big OBJ player. And Pred, he's Pred. He's a wild card. Xnid, he's kind of the only one that I think is going to be playing your kind of more typical COD. He's probably going to have to be the one to soak that hill time for this team because the rest of this team is going to be pretty Slayer heavy. And I think they're going to need that to be their key to success. But the thing with this team is Celium has always been critiqued as for his communication. And I really want to see him step up in that area. And now there's also going to be a little bit of some communication gaps as Xnid still doesn't speak the best English, but he is getting better. This team has potential for some shakeups, but right now I just don't know what I can think of this team. I think right now they're looking better than Miami Heretics, but compared to the rest of the CDL, I just don't know how these playstyles are going to mesh and if they're going to mesh well at all. Um, it's hard to really give them a ton of credit where credit is due, but I think they have opportunities for some really, really solid shakeups. Going into our next team, we have Optic Texas. And I mean, I feel like there's not really much to talk about with this team. They are currently sitting at the CDL, almost sitting at the record for most tournament series wins in a row at 14. If you count EWC and you count this invitational, then they have beaten that record. But they are on an absolute tear right now. They once again did not drop a map until grand finals, replicating uh, their champs performance, basically going all the way to map 7 with the Paris Gentlemates. But they look absolutely unstoppable, and they're picking up exactly where they leave off. There's not really much more to say about Optic Texas other than that. Dashy, Hook, Mercules, and Shotzi. Merc and Dashy picking up right where they left off as the AR duo. Hook and Shotzi doing everything, all the things that they can to just be these absolutely disgusting players. Hook was running challengers in Major 1 last year and then came on to Optic Texas. And honestly, I think was a big part of Optic Texas's success. I think between Hook and Mercules, they are the ones who saved Optic Texas's season. And then Shotzi, he's already back to doing Shotzi things. Dashy is continuing to do Dashy things. These guys are just, they're on a whole other level. It's why they are currently the one and only S tier team. And I am expecting to see kind of similar stuff from them until the rest of the teams can catch up. And it might be difficult for the other teams to catch up because they already have the synergy going into the year, and they could continue to pull that synergy on and continue to look absolutely incredible going into the rest of the year. So currently, right now, easily they're the only S tier team. I don't know if that will change. I kind of hope it changes. I want to see some big shakeups, but we won't know until obviously the season happens. Up next, we have Toronto Koi, a team that did pretty well in the Invitational. I think they still have some growing pains. They managed to win 3-0 over Miami. They lost 3-2 to Cloud9. And then they lost to Vegas to FaZe, which I feel like losing to FaZe for them was a little bit weird, but also we'll get to FaZe in just a moment. FaZe is still a really, really strong team, but we still have the same duo of Kleenex and Insight. Joda Siebes, being the absolute animal that he is, continues off on his tear, and Real coming over from Miami, a huge upgrade over Beans. This Toronto Koi roster is going to be a very nasty one as the season goes on. Right now, honestly, it's hard for me to put them much higher than high B tier to low A tier, because they did lose to FaZe, which I really just based on FaZe's performance, I really don't think should have happened. But at the same time, this team is incredible, and I think that they have a lot of opportunities to do something amazing. I really personally, I want to see specifically Insight in this year getting more, or not Insight, Kleenex, I think. Yeah, Jamie. I want to see Jamie get more active on the map. He has been known as being one of the slowest SMGs out there, and I really think if he is going to want to catch up to players like Real and Joe Deceives and continue to build Toronto Koi to the level that they need to be, they just need to step up their pacing. Pacing is such a key point in Call of Duty right now. Call of Duty is only getting faster and faster and faster, and if you're not getting faster, then you're not going to do well. And it's because of that weak point right there that I'm a little bit worried about what this Koi roster is going to do. So right now, I'm going to be putting them in B tier. I don't think they're quite to the level where they should be. I think they should be a much stronger team, but they do have a lot of work, I think, that needs to happen before we're going to see the Toronto Koi from last year. Yeah, I really just think that they need a little bit more work before they're as strong as they were last year. Up next, we have Vancouver Surge. Vancouver Surge is another question mark team. There's a lot about this team that I just don't understand. Abe coming over from Toronto Koi, from specifically just the EWC performance. Abe didn't really do anything in EWC. He didn't necessarily do anything bad. He didn't do anything right. He just kind of was there. And I don't necessarily think he is a bad player by any means whatsoever. I just don't think that he could be the best player from what we would be expecting out of him for the rest of Toronto Koi. I think he has an opportunity to be really, really strong, but I think he just needs, I don't know exactly what he needs right now. He's there, and I think he has an opportunity to do something really good. He just is, again, he's a wild card. Gwyn is a player that I feel so bad for. I feel like Gwyn in his career has just been always put on these not great teams. I think he is a phenomenal player. Winning, he won Rookie of the Year in MW3, which I think was really, really well deserved. And then going into last year, he was on Carolina again, and it did not go well for him. And again, I think it happened 2 years ago as well, where he just was playing really, really well, but I don't think the rest of his team was able to really keep up in the way that they need to. Gwyn is somebody that needs to be able to take over, and I think he's just finding himself in these situations where he's not on teams that will allow him to play the way he needs to play. And so I really just think the rest of his team are going to need to really step up in order to help him to get to where he needs to be. Up next, we have Legend. Legend, the Optic Halo player, is now on Vancouver Surge. Now, I'm going to be bringing out my hot take here. I genuinely am confused as to why a team would want a Halo player at the very start of the year in the CDL. Now, again, if you are Legend, if you're offered a CDL contract, you take it. I'm not saying Legend made a bad decision by signing with Vancouver Surge. However, there are enough differences between Halo and Call of Duty that Legend is going to have to learn how to adjust. And I really am nervous that he's not going to be able to make the adjustments needed in order for Vancouver to be successful. I think that he's a wild card. He's got a ton of growing pains to do. It's going to be an interesting rookie season for him. It could be good. It could be bad. I feel like we won't really know until we know, which is weird to say it, but I think that's just kind of how it is. Up next, we have Lunars. Lunars played on the Gentlemates near the end of the season last year, and honestly put up a really, really solid performance in this Monster Energy Invitational. A 1.02 S&D KD, 1.12 overall KD, 1.17 in hardpoint, and a 1.10 in overload. I think he overall honestly just had a really, really strong performance. Even in their losses, he was still one of the better players. And so I think that Lunars is making a ton of really, really solid improvements from what we saw from last year. And I think if he continues on, he could be a really, really strong player. The unfortunate part with the rest of this Vancouver roster is they are so all over the place, and there's just, I just don't know what to think of them. that I genuinely don't see them right now making any major headway in the season. And so I really think that Vancouver are just going to be sitting at D tier. I don't see them making it too far unless they make some crazy miracle runs or a ton of growth is going to happen. Again, prove me wrong. I want to be proven wrong, but only time will tell. Then up next and last, but certainly not least, we have FaZe Vegas, a team that on paper, again, look disgusting. We've got 0-4 and Abuza from Vancouver Surge last year. They were two stupidly strong players, and then you have Draza and Simp. I mean, I feel like you don't really need to say too much more about Draza and Simp and what they've been doing on FaZe. Simp has been one of the longest standing members of FaZe for a long time. Draza is getting to that point. I was a little curious that Draza stuck around on FaZe because I think in terms of consistency, Draza just hasn't been the most consistent. And I think that continued to show at this invitational. Now, granted, Draza was sick, was very sick during this tournament to the point where he was literally told to stop talking in comms by Simp. So I it's hard to really base their performance too much with this, but it's hard to know for sure. Abuza was one of the better players on the team. He is continuing exactly where he left off. Abuza was also pulling out a sniper rifle in those SMGs and looking really, really strong. And then you have 0-4 and Simp on that SMG duo, and they're going to look nasty. Simp being the takeover man that he is, 0-4 being able to learn how to become a strong takeover man could be the thing that pushes FaZe Vegas over that success line. Right now, we aren't really seeing it. It could happen, but right now I don't really know exactly what to expect from them. I don't think they're exactly where they need to be. They finished at a 5th, 6th, which I think is not as where, if you are FaZe, where you want to be. But I do think they have a lot of opportunities to be a really strong team. I think they are our final B tier team. We have a ton of B tier teams right now, and which honestly is kind of what I expect. Right now, I think there's just a lot of teams that have a lot of room for growth and a lot of teams that could honestly fall off quite a bit. And so I'm very interested to see what these teams are going to come forward. I'm excited to see what these teams are going to do. And yeah, this is what we're looking at now for the CDL 2027 rosters. Tier list, I am excited to see it. I know it's weird to see G2 Minnesota as an A tier team, but they honestly cooked so hard during the launch invitational. It's hard to not put them in A tier right now. And I think if they continue on their momentum, they're going to look really, really strong. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know with any constructive comments as to what you think, if these teams are gonna, what teams you're gonna expect, maybe make a run, maybe some upsets. I'm excited to see it. Major 1 is going to be starting here very soon in just a couple of weeks in early December, and I'm excited to see what is going to happen here with all of these teams as we get into the Black Ops 7 season. And as always, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm trying to do as much coverage of the CDL season and even some challenges content. We'll kind of see how life goes. I have plans for some really, really strong videos that I want to put out, but only time will tell. But either way, thank you guys again for watching. You were loved, you were valued, you were fearfully and wonderfully made, and we will see you right here next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.